My dad put "Congrats, loser" on my graduation cake. Said it was a joke. Everyone laughed, except my little sister. She wrote something in her diary that night, then handed it to me. The next day, I read it aloud in front of the whole family. What happened next made my mother drop her fork. My name's Nate. I'm 21. I graduated college 2 weeks ago. Full scholarship. Part-time jobs the whole way through. No loans. No help. Just me grinding it out because I wanted better. Not just for me, but for my little sister, Abby. The day of my graduation party was supposed to be the first time I actually felt seen by my family. Not tolerated. Not teased. Just acknowledged. Instead, my dad walked out of the kitchen holding the cake, and across it, in red frosting, were the words, "Congrats, loser." All caps. Smiling emoji drawn in the corner. My uncle actually slapped his knee laughing. My mom gave a small snort and said, "You know your dad. Always cracking jokes." People laughed. My cousins took pictures. One of them actually tried to hand me a slice, like I was going to take it with a smile and pretend this was normal. Like this wasn't just another slap dressed as a joke. And maybe I could have played along, if I hadn't caught Abby's face. She was sitting off to the side on the armrest of the couch, legs crossed, hoodie pulled over her knees. She wasn't laughing. She was staring at the cake, pale, like her stomach had just dropped. Then she looked at me. Just a quick glance. But I saw something in her eyes, like she already knew this was going to happen. And maybe she hated herself for not stopping it. That's what broke me. Not the cake. Not the laughter. Not even my dad's smug, "You know I'm just kidding" face. It was my sister's quiet disappointment. Abby's only 15, but she's smart. Sharper than they know. And that night, after everyone went home and the kitchen was full of dirty plates and silence, she knocked on my door. No words. Just handed me her diary and whispered, "Page 42." Then she went back to her room. Now, we're not the kind of siblings that do deep heart-to-hearts. We've always been more of the sit in the same room in silence type. She plays her Switch, I do coursework. That kind of bond. Quiet, but solid. So this meant something. I waited until the house was asleep. I sat at my desk, cracked the book open, and turned to the page. She had titled it, "What Dad Said the Night I Heard Him in the Garage." It started off with a simple note. Abby had been up late, couldn't sleep, went downstairs to get juice. She walked past the garage and heard voices. My dad was in there with someone. Maybe on the phone, maybe talking to himself. But his voice was loud. Angry. Not like normal. And then she wrote this. He said, "If Nate gets ahead, we all get left behind." He said, "He thinks he's better than us now. Let's see how long that lasts when he comes home and realizes he's still just a joke in this family." And then he laughed. That cold laugh he only uses when he's serious but wants people to think he's not. She ended the entry with this line. That's why the cake said what it said. It was never a joke. It was punishment. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat there, staring at that last sentence, trying to figure out how the man who raised me could think this way. Like my success was some kind of betrayal. Like he wanted to clip my wings just to keep the family balanced. It explains so much. Why he always undercut me. Why he mocked every small win I ever had. Why, when I got my first paid internship, he told me not to get cocky because those companies chew up people like you. I thought it was just his weird way of tough love. But it wasn't love. It was fear. And the worst part? Mom knew. Abby wrote in a different entry, dated 3 days after that garage night, that she overheard Mom and Dad talking about it in the kitchen. That they both agreed I was too proud for my own good. That some failure would humble him before it's too late. Too proud for working 3 jobs while studying? Too proud for skipping spring breaks, birthdays, and weekends just to graduate on time? Too proud for not ending up like them? That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to confront. I wasn't going to yell. I was going to read that diary entry out loud. At breakfast. In front of both of them. Let's see if "Congrats, loser" still gets a laugh after that. They were all already at the table when I walked in. Mom was buttering toast. Dad was on his second cup of coffee, scrolling something on his phone. Abby was sitting stiffly, her fork poking at a half-eaten scrambled egg like it personally offended her. I didn't say good morning. I didn't sit down. I held up the diary. Dad looked up first. "What's that?" he asked casually, like I was holding a magazine. Abby's head snapped up. She blinked at me, then at the diary, then back to her plate. She already knew what was about to happen. I didn't speak right away. I just opened to the dog-eared page and cleared my throat. "I'm going to read something," I said. Mom looked confused. "Read what?" I started. March 8th. What Dad said the night I heard him in the garage. Immediately, Dad sat up straighter. "What is this?" I ignored him. He said, "If Nate gets ahead, we all get left behind." A clatter. Mom dropped her knife. Abby flinched. I kept going. He said, "He thinks he's better than us now." Let's see how long that lasts when he comes home and realizes he's still just a joke in this family. You're reading her private diary? Mom gasped, trying to make me the villain now. That's crossing a line. No, I said calmly. What he said crossed a line. Abby just had the guts to write it down. I kept reading. That's why the cake said what it said. It was never a joke. It was punishment. Dad leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. Put that down. But I didn't. I wasn't done. I turned the page and read the next part. Abby's overheard kitchen conversation. The one where Mom said, some failure would humble him before it's too late. Mom went pale. You think I made that up? I said, this isn't some teenage diary fiction. This is what she hears. What you say when you think no one's listening. Dad stood up. You've got a lot of nerve, son. Yeah, I said, staring straight at him. I got it from you. The silence that followed was dense, heavy, the kind that fills your lungs and makes it hard to breathe. And then, just as I was about to close the book, Abby stood up. She walked over to me, took the diary from my hand, turned to the last page, and read it herself. Sometimes I think Nate's the only one who actually wants out. Everyone else just wants to pull him back so they don't have to feel small. Then she shut the book and walked out of the room. Nobody said anything for a long time after that. Eventually, Dad sat back down, but he didn't pick up his fork. He didn't say another word. Not to me, not to Mom. Just stared out the window like something had cracked inside him and he couldn't glue it back together. Mom tried to act like it hadn't happened. She finished her coffee and said, I hope you're happy. You embarrassed this family. I laughed, not because it was funny, because that word, family, sounded so broken in her mouth. Like she didn't even believe it anymore. Maybe the family embarrassed itself, I said. I just finally held up a mirror. Then I left the table, went upstairs, packed a bag. I didn't slam any doors, didn't yell, didn't throw a fit. But before I walked out that morning, I stopped at Abby's door. She was sitting on her bed, legs curled up, holding the diary tight against her chest. You okay? I asked. She nodded, but her eyes were glassy. Thank you, I said, for telling the truth. She gave me a small smile. They'll try to make you feel bad for this, she said. Don't let them. And I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one carrying the shame. They were. I didn't go far that day. Just enough distance to think clearly. I stayed at a friend's place. Tiny apartment, a broken futon, sink that whines when you turn the tap too fast. But the silence? The peace of not being under the same roof as the people who spent years pretending I was just too sensitive. That silence was gold. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I had to constantly brace for a joke with teeth. But Abby called that night. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She just said, you need to come back for one more breakfast. I asked why. She hesitated for a second, then said, because I have something they won't be able to laugh off. The next morning, I walked into the house like I still lived there. Same table, same chairs, Dad in his spot at the head like nothing had changed. He looked up from his phone. You back now? I ignored him. Sat down across from Abby. Mom was pouring coffee. I came to return something, I said. I pulled out my phone. Abby reached into her hoodie pocket and handed me a flash drive. Dad squinted. What is that? Something Abby recorded. Couple weeks ago. Mom froze mid-pour. I thought it was fake, Abby said quietly. When I first heard them say it, I thought I imagined it. Then I realized no, I wasn't crazy. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, hit play, and let the room fill with their own voices. Dad. He acts like he's too good for us now. That scholarship gave him a superiority complex. Mom. Let him walk a mile in our shoes before he throws around his big degree. Dad, exactly. A little embarrassment will remind him where he came from. You could hear them smirking through the words. Abby had caught it on her phone, left recording on the kitchen counter one night when they didn't know she was awake. You could even hear the knife chopping in the background. Casual. Cold. And then my mom's voice again. He won't leave. He still sends money, still feels responsible. He'll forgive us. He always does. The audio stopped. The only sound in the kitchen now was the low hum of the refrigerator. Mom's hand shook. The coffee pot rattled against the counter. Dad stood up slowly. You recorded us without permission? That's illegal. I looked up. So is emotional sabotage, but I don't see you worried about that. He looked to Mom, like maybe she'd back him up. But she didn't say a word. She didn't even meet his eyes. And then Abby said something that cut deeper than anything else that morning. You didn't break Nate. But you might have broken me. She said it without tears. No yelling. No dramatic flair. Just honesty. I saw Dad's jaw tighten. Like for a second, he wanted to shout her down. But the words didn't come. Because deep down, he knew it was true. That audio file. It was a confession wrapped in pride. And now that pride was laid bare. Ugly. Raw. Echoing off the kitchen tiles like a bad dream someone finally woke up in. I stood up. I'm not here to ask for an apology, I said. I know I won't get one, but I am here to let you know that this little power game, it's over. Dad looked like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned to Abby. You packed? She nodded. I'd already cleared space in my apartment. I didn't care how tight it got. I didn't care if we had to share a mattress. She was coming with me. But before we left, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a copy of the diary. I made one for them, she said. She placed it right in the center of the table. The front page had a sticky note. All it said was, "You should have just written congratulations." And we walked out. Abby moved in that afternoon. No dramatic luggage dragging. No shouting. Just 2 backpacks, a pillow, and her diary. My apartment wasn't much. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchenette, and a couch that squeaked every time you looked at it wrong. But it was ours. For the first time, we were building something that didn't have strings attached. I gave her the bedroom. She didn't argue. I took the couch. I didn't mind. That first night, we ordered greasy takeout and ate it straight from the boxes. No jokes. No jabs. Just quiet conversation, like 2 people slowly unlearning survival mode. It's strange how silence feels when it's no longer weaponized. You think they'll come after me? Abby asked after dinner. I shook my head. They can't. And they won't. She nodded like she wanted to believe that. But trust doesn't grow overnight when you've spent years being trained to doubt yourself. For days, we didn't hear from them. Not a call. Not a message. Just silence. And you'd think that would bring peace. But it didn't. Not yet. Because silence from abusers feels different than silence from strangers. It hums with unspoken tension. The kind that makes you check your phone just to not see a notification. But then, the voicemail started. First one was from Mom. Abby, come home. This is ridiculous. You're just confused. Your brother is twisting things. The second came a day later. Nate, we don't deserve this. Families fight. That doesn't mean you walk away. By the 5th voicemail, it wasn't guilt anymore. It was manipulation. If your grandmother finds out what you've done, she'll be heartbroken. She won't recover from this. They always say it's about love, right up until you stop obeying them. I played one of the messages for Abby. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She just said, they're scared. I asked of what? She looked at me and said, of being irrelevant to people who finally see through them. And damn if that didn't hit hard. Because that's exactly what it was. They weren't sorry. They were losing control. It took a few weeks to find rhythm. Abby enrolled in therapy, free sessions through her school. I picked up more hours at work. We split groceries, argued about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It does, and slowly, painfully, started living. Some nights, she'd still wake up from what she called mental static. It wasn't quite nightmares, but it was close. That twitchy, high-alert feeling you get when your brain expects to be punished for being happy. I knew that feeling too well. One night, I found her sitting on the kitchen floor at 3 a.m., scrolling through old photos on her phone. Birthday parties, vacations, blurry selfies. Did we ever actually look happy in these? She asked, holding up a picture of us at age 10 and 16, grinning under some sad piñata. I stared at it for a long time, then said, we looked trained. She nodded. And that was the beginning of something. The beginning of calling things what they really were. We weren't healing because time passed. We were healing because we stopped lying to ourselves about the past. About our parents. About the jokes. About what was allowed to hurt. Abby started writing again. Not just diary entries, but essays. Stories. Poetry. She gave me one to read one night, and I swear, it felt like someone had cracked her open and light poured out. One line hit me so hard I copied it into my notes app. If breaking me was a joke, surviving me will be the punchline. I printed it, framed it, hung it on our wall above the kitchen counter. She rolled her eyes, of course, but I saw her glance at it every time she walked past. And yeah, the couch still squeaked. The pipes still moaned. But our little apartment became a sanctuary. It didn't have a fireplace or an open floor plan, but it had honesty. And for the first time in our lives, that was more than enough. 3 months passed. Then came the envelope. It wasn't a text, not an email, not even a voicemail. Just a thick ivory card slid under our apartment door sometime in the afternoon, sealed with a fake gold sticker and my mother's careful cursive handwriting. You are invited to a family reconciliation dinner. Sunday, 6 p.m. at home. No apology. No message. No explanation. Just that. Abby found it first. She picked it up with 2 fingers like it might burn her skin. What is this, a wedding or a hostage negotiation? I took it, read it twice, then said, it's bait. She nodded. They want to stage a forgiveness photo. Pretend everything's fine. We left the invitation on the counter next to the salt jar and didn't talk about it for a full day. But I could see it in her face every time she walked past. It gnawed at her. Not because she wanted to go, but because some small, wounded part of her wanted them to want her for real. By Saturday night, she'd had enough. I'm going, she said suddenly. I turned from the sink. Why? She met my eyes. Because they expect me to come back small. Quiet. Ashamed. She paused. I want them to see I'm not. I nodded. Then I'm going with you. We didn't dress up. No theatrics. I wore the same button-up I wore to job interviews. Abby wore jeans and a t-shirt with a quote from a fantasy book she loved. I am not what you made me. Fitting. The house hadn't changed. Same plastic tablecloth. Same photos on the mantle. Same smell of overcooked garlic and passive aggression. They tried to smile when we walked in. Mom opened the door with this stretched grin that didn't touch her eyes. Oh good. You got the invite. Abby walked in like she owned the place. Calm. Steady. Dad was in the dining room, carving roast chicken like he was some suburban king. Abby, he said warmly. Nate, glad you made it. No mention of the diary. The audio. The accusations. Like those months never happened. The table was full. Grandparents, cousins, a few aunts and uncles. Everyone pretending this was some harmless Sunday dinner. Until Abby pulled something from her bag and placed it gently on her plate. A copy of her diary. Not the original. Just a copy. Spiral bound. One sticky note across the front. For anyone who still thinks it was a phase. She didn't open it. Didn't say a word. But the message was clear. I watched my mom's smile falter. My dad stopped chewing. Then Abby finally spoke. Quiet, but sharp enough to draw blood. You called this a reconciliation dinner. But you never actually said the word sorry. Dead silence. She turned to our grandfather, who looked confused. Do you know what they said about Nate when he got his scholarship? About me, when I asked to see a therapist? Then she flipped open the diary to the same page I had read out loud that morning months ago. Page 42. She didn't read it this time. Just let the words sit there. Let the truth exist. I'm not angry anymore, she said. I just want it on record that we see you now. Clearly. Then she stood up. Dad opened his mouth. You're being dramatic. No, she interrupted. You're just used to being the only voice in the room. That shut him up. She looked around the table once more. I thought this dinner might give me peace, she said. But peace doesn't come from pretending. It comes from letting go. Then she walked out. And this time, I followed her. Not as her shield. Not as her backup. But as her equal. My parents didn't chase us. They didn't call. They just sat there, surrounded by family, and yet utterly exposed. And I realized something as the door closed behind us. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. It's been 1 year since Abby walked out of that dinner. 1 year since she placed that diary in the center of the table like a landmine and smiled as it ticked down in silence. A lot's changed. I got a better job, still in the same field, just more hours, better pay. We moved to a slightly bigger apartment. 2 bedrooms this time. Real beds. A kitchen table that doesn't wobble. Still no dishwasher, but we've learned to laugh about that. Abby. She's different now. I mean, she's still Abby. Still low-key, still sharp, still allergic to small talk. But now there's a steadiness to her. A confidence that wasn't there before. She started publishing. Small stuff at first. Articles, essays. One of them went viral. A piece about psychological projection and parentification in families. It hit hard. Got shared around forums. People left comments like, this is the first time I've seen someone explain exactly what I went through. She didn't use our names. Didn't need to. The truth doesn't need a signature to hit home. She even got an offer to speak at a youth conference last month. She turned it down. Not because she wasn't ready, but because she wanted her words to speak louder than her face. Let them picture their own sibling, she said. Not me. And me? I finally stopped checking my phone for their names. They still try sometimes. Birthdays. Holidays. Anniversaries. I'll get a card in the mail with no return address. A message in a different tone every time. One says, we miss you. The next says, don't forget who helped you get here. The last one came just this week. My birthday. A plain envelope. No handwriting. Inside was a single photo. From that graduation party. The cake in the center. Congrats, loser in red icing. My smile frozen halfway between pain and performative politeness. No note. No explanation. Abby saw it and said, they're hoping you'll feel something. I nodded. They're right. But it's not what they wanted. Because now when I look at that photo, I don't feel shame. I feel clarity. I feel the exact moment I realized I didn't owe anyone my silence, just to keep things peaceful. That cake didn't humiliate me. It exposed them. A few weeks ago, Abby and I took a weekend trip to the coast. Rented a beat-up cabin. Watched bad movies. Ate too much chocolate. One night, she sat by the window, scribbling in a new journal, one that didn't look like a shield anymore. It looked like a blueprint. I think I'm going to write a book, she said. What about? She smiled. About surviving people who confuse cruelty for love. I asked if she'd dedicate it to anyone. She didn't answer for a while. Then she looked at me and said, to the ones who taught me what love wasn't, and the one who showed me what it is. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because we weren't sitting in survival anymore. We were sitting in freedom, and it didn't come from revenge, or confrontation, or changing their minds. It came from walking away, from rebuilding, from choosing each other. So here's how it ends. Not with a courtroom, not with applause, not with some dramatic screaming match. Just two siblings in a small apartment, eating cereal at midnight, knowing they made it out. And if anyone ever asks me what finally healed us, I'll say this. Sometimes the truth isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a page, a voice, a line drawn in ink that refuses to disappear. And sometimes it's the quietest people who write the loudest legacy. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.